Saptajivanam Kavipiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadattatam Bhuvangarnantiye Burita Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poets' ears, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears, cleanser of all sins, is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Good evening, friends. Today we will continue from where we left off in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We are on page 129. And just as for a slight review, last week we left off when Ramakrishna was talking about visiting holy places, places of pilgrimage, and the holy associations that he had with them, and also the divine emotions that were triggered, and when he remembered that these were about the events that took place in these holy places. And so he's speaking about visiting Vrindavan. He also mentioned because he could not visit these places on his own, he usually went along with Mathur Babu, who could afford to these kind of extravagant travels with all the necessary palanquins, the people, whatever he would need to take a trip from Calcutta to Benares, and also to take care of Shamakrishna along the way. So, but Mathur's purpose was usually business-minded. Shamakrishna's purpose was spiritually minded, but sometimes he had no choice and had to listen to all kinds of worldly talk, which was really, he found rather disgusting. And he longed to go to places that were actually associated with Lord Krishna. So while he was there, he also met holy men, and what we're about to read today is about a woman saint that he met. This woman saint is regarded by the Vaishnavas as a reincarnation of one of the intimate attendants of Sri Radha. So we will resume from there. And her name was Ganga Mai. And she was about 60 years old when Ramakrishna met her. And he would have been about 32 at that time. So he met her in 1868. So Ganga Mai became very fond of me in Vrindavan. Obviously, because when the two met, all they would speak about would be spiritual things, spiritual themes, and she would have been a devotee of Krishna. So Ganga Mai became very fond of me in Vrindavan. She was an old woman who lived all alone in a hut near the Nidhuvan. So Nidhuvan is a place near Vrindavan or within Vrindavan. Now here he's calling her an old woman at 60 years old. By today's standard, we would not necessarily call someone 60 years old. They would at first be very embarrassed. Nowadays, 50 is considered like the new 30, and the 60 would be the new 40. So, but in those days, lifespans were short. So 60 years old might have been considered an older person. Well, they would consider that person old. So referring to my spiritual condition and ecstasy, so whenever he visited these holy places, he would go into experience these divine emotions and have experiences that he would become unconscious of the world around him. And she understood these visions because she was having them herself. So he found a lot of he was consoled by her experiences, that he was not experiencing something that was unnatural for a spiritual aspirant, or that he was going crazy. So referring to my spiritual condition and ecstasy, she said, he is the very embodiment of Radha. So she saw in him that he embodied her, I would say, her divine ideal. He would, when he would have these experiences, he would see in him, the experiences that Radha would have when she was near Krishna or experienced Krishna. So here she was thinking, well, he's behaving like Radha would when she would experience Krishna, while he was experiencing Krishna. So she addressed me as Dulali. Well, Dulali is a very affectionate term that one would use to address Radha. So she looked upon Sri Ramakrishna as Radha. When with her, I used to forget my food and drink, my bath, and all thought of going home. On some days, Hridoy used to bring food from home and feed me. Gangamai also would serve me with food prepared by her own hands. Gangamai used to experience trances. At such times, a great crowd would come to see her. One day, in a state of ecstasy, she climbed on Hridoy's shoulders. Well, in this state of ecstasy, they are not aware of person, place, or they're not aware of their surroundings in that sense. They're experiencing something. We don't know what they are seeing, what is, but they're going through some spiritual emotion, some divine emotion. I do not know what she was experiencing at the time when she thought she was climbing Hridoy's shoulders, but it seems that it's not uncommon when someone has some kind of spiritual experience that they may seem to act irrational. I didn't want to leave her and return to Calcutta. So he felt that when he was in her presence, that because she had all these divine emotions and experiences along, and also he did, he felt like they were soulmates. And he did not want to leave. He did not want to go back to Dakshineshwar, have to deal with all the worldly things going there. And he thought, when she's absorbed in God, I want to be absorbed in God. That kind of thing. So there was a kinship there, and he did not want to leave her and return to Calcutta. And he expressed those desires to Mathur Babu and Hridoy, who was his caretaker, basically. And everything was arranged for me to stay with her. I was to eat double-boiled rice, and we were to have our beds on either side of the cottage. All the arrangements had been made when Hridoy said, "You have such a weak stomach. Who will look after you?" "Why," said Gangamai, "I shall look after him. I'll nurse him." As Hridoy dragged me by one hand and she by the other, I remembered my mother, who was then living alone here in the Nahabat of the temple garden. So now his mind was coming back down to his life and what he was leaving behind if he decided to stay there. But the thought of leaving his mother behind, that caused him some discomfort and pain. I found it impossible to stay away from her and said to Gangamai, "No, I must go." I loved the atmosphere of Vrindavan. So this part of he's telling this story to to devotees and brother disciples back at Kineshar. So about 11 o'clock, the master took his meal, the offerings from the temple of Kali. So just like when we do a worship here, we have the offerings, we call them prasad. And then that became his meal and the meal for the devotees that were present with him. So after taking his noonday rest, he resumed his conversation with the devotees. Every now and then he uttered the holy word Om, or repeated the sacred names of the deities. After sunset, the evening worship was performed in the temples. Since it was the day of Vijoya, the devotees first saluted the Divine Mother and then took the dust of the Master's feet. As I had mentioned at the beginning of this day, which actually we had covered over a 3-week period, Vijoya is the last day of the worship of the Divine Mother Durga. That's the day when the image is submerged, in this case, in the river Ganga. And so it is traditional that they then salute the Divine Mother as she is departing them, and then they take the dust of the Master's feet. And that concludes that day. So the next day is Tuesday, October 24th, 1882. It was 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The Master was standing near the shelf where the food was kept when Balaram and M arrived from Calcutta and saluted him. Sri Ramakrishna said to them with a smile, "I was going to take some sweets from the shelf, but no sooner did I put my hand on them than a lizard dropped on my body. At once I removed my hand." All laugh. Well, there's a footnote here. The dropping of a lizard on the body is considered an omen. Now, when I visited India, it was not uncommon to see lizards walking along the walls. And in fact, I was quite surprised when I saw a lizard come up from behind a painting on the hung on the wall. I guess they stay there to stay cool, and then they come out and start investigating. But sometimes they fall down, and it's considered an omen. Now, of course, everyone is kind of laughed by that. But then Sri Ramakrishna says, "Oh yes, one should observe all these things." So it's considered an omen. You would think, oh, that's a superstition. Why is Sri Ramakrishna paying attention to the superstitions of those days? So here we have Sri Ramakrishna living in India, trying to give these teachings of his experiences. trying to explain spiritual knowledge, and yet we see him at times also accommodating the superstitions of the day. For example, what day of the week not to travel on, what days are auspicious to travel on, a lizard falling down, and as we come to see further, a few other things also. So the idea basically is that he's observing these traditions because that is what is common in society, but he does not want to say, no, these superstitions are foolish things, you don't need to pay attention to them. Chant the name of the Lord and go on with your day is basically what he says in many of the other parts of the gospel. But periodically, depending on who the audience is, you'll see him also accommodating these social superstitions, which I don't think he himself in his heart actually believed, but he feels that they should be still followed. The idea being not to terminate people's beliefs all at once, but let them on their own decide with their own thinking whether it still makes sense to adhere to the superstitions. When Swami Vivekananda introduced Vedanta to the West, he only wanted to bring the essential teachings of Hinduism, not the fact that, well, okay, so society will consider it an omen if a lizard falls down falls down in front of you, or certain days are not auspicious for travel. Swami Vivekananda did not want that part of Hinduism to be part of what he was trying to teach, because he felt that those are distractions from the essential teachings of Hinduism. And there's also confusion. Well, doesn't that also consist of all the things that one part does within society? Because we always say, well, a Hindu does this, a Hindu does that, and we think that's part of their religion. But it's things that may be part of a religion. Nobody knows why it's an omen or why these days are inauspicious for travel. So if you don't know why something is done, should you continue doing those things? And Sri Ramakrishna felt, only do those things that make sense. And Swami Vivekananda, that's the kind of Vedanta he wanted to bring to the West. You only believe those things that actually make sense, that you can explain. These other things, they may have had some meaning way back when, but the meaning has been forgotten. So, oh yes, one should observe all these things. You see, Rakal is ill, and my limbs ache too. Do you know what's the matter? So sometime if Sri Ramakrishna would identify with other people, if they were sick, he might feel ill. And then he would wonder, am I also sick? What is the matter with me? Well, right now he's speaking to M and Balaram, just basically telling him what's on his mind. And then he continues and says, this morning as I was leaving my bed, I saw a certain person whom I took for Rakal. And all laugh. And as a footnote, Orthodox Hindus in Bengal believe that the first face seen in the morning indicates whether the day will bring good or evil. Again, another superstition. But sometimes Ramakrishna, depending on his state of mind, sometimes they worried him. Maybe there's some truth behind it, but he doesn't know why. But all thought that was a bit silly, and so they laughed. And then he says, "Oh yes, physical features should be studied. The other day, Narendra brought one of his friends, a man with only one good eye, though the other eye was not totally blind. I said to myself, what is this trouble that Narendra has brought with him?" So there's just like one might say, well, what is this? We look at somebody, we see some deformity, and we make a judgment. Well, we do that naturally. When we see some difference, we wonder, what's wrong? Why is that person? We notice something odd. We may not say anything, but we notice something. And then Sri Ramakrishna is saying, well, he noticed that this person had only one good eye. And then he's wondering, well, maybe he's something odd about him. Maybe he'll cause Narendra some trouble. Maybe he's a person that has some other characteristics. Sometimes Ramakrishna would sometimes say that one should observe one's a person's physical features, sort of like what they call physiognomy. By observing physical characteristics, you can get an idea what their character is like. And so he might by observing that someone might be squint-eyed or something, he'll say something, oh, that person cannot trust him, that kind of thing. So, or by the facial expression, they might, just how we might look at someone and then we feel a bit uneasy. So the more you meet people, then you realize that there are certain characteristics that you might notice that might indicate whether that person is trustworthy. Is that person of good character? Should I stay away from such a person? Do I feel fearful in front of that person? So there's certain characteristics that the way they walk, their body language, their expression, the way they speak. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying that, yes, these things should be observed and one should act accordingly. So Sri Ramakrishna felt that this person might cause some trouble to Narendra. So he continues, a certain person comes here, but I can't eat any food that he brings. He works in an office at a salary of 20 rupees and earns another 20 by writing false bills. I can't utter a word in his presence because he tells lies. Sometimes he stays here 2 or 3 days without going to his office. Can you guess his purpose? It is that I should recommend him to someone for a job somewhere else. So people come to a holy man with ulterior motive, hoping for blessings. Sometimes even Mathur Babu would sometimes ask Sri Ramakrishna to please help him in a lawsuit and offer something to the Divine Mother, but not actually reveal to Sri Ramakrishna that the purpose of this offering was so that he would win a lawsuit. But Sri Ramakrishna could often see such things behind a person's intentions. And in this case, he's observing that this person keeps coming here, but his intentions are immoral. But because he believes that, well, this is a holy man, that perhaps he will gain some benefit. Benefit means perhaps some other members or devotees that attend might see, well, he's come to Sri Ramakrishna, so he must be trustworthy. Maybe, so then if this gentleman says, well, do you know of any good jobs? Well, if any devotee would think, well, he comes to Sri Ramakrishna, then he must be a good character. So yes, I'll recommend him without actually knowing that person in detail. So then he continues, Balaram comes from a family of devout Vaishnavas. His father, now an old man, is a pious devotee. He has a tuft of hair on his head, a rosary of tulsi beads around his neck, and a string of beads in his hand. He devotes his time to the repetition of God's name. He owns much property in Orissa and has built temples to Radha, Krishna, in Kotar, Vrindavan, and other places, establishing free guest houses as well. And then he's speaking to Balaram. A certain person came here the other day. I understand he is the slave of that black hag of a wife. Why is it that people do not see God? It is because of the barrier of lust and gold. How impudent he was to say to you the other day, a Paramahamsa came to my father, who fed him with chicken curry. And then there's a footnote. Orthodox Hindus are forbidden to eat chicken. So here Sri Ramakrishna is saying that, well, this person must have told a lie because you don't feed chicken curry to a Vaishnava. They will not eat it. So in my present state of mind, I can eat a little fish soup if it has been offered to the Divine Mother beforehand. I can't eat any meat, even if it is offered to the Divine Mother. But I taste it with the end of my finger, lest she should be angry. And everyone laughs. So here, a little bit of superstition again creeps into it, but he behaves. He behaves as much as he tries to behave like everybody else, so that everybody else kind of feels closer to him. So, they'll say he's just like us, but he also speaks about spiritual matters. So he's trying to come down to their level, and so he also doesn't want to offend the Divine Mother, because he doesn't eat meat. Well, that's because it's customary that they would slaughter a goat to offer to the Divine Mother. And he did not like to see the goat slaughtered and going through all that pain. He felt uncomfortable eating that meat. And yet that was what was being offered as prasad to the Divine Mother and then brought to the devotees to eat. Well, those that ate meat, they had no qualms about it, but Sri Ramakrishna himself was not comfortable eating meat from an animal being slaughtered. So he felt, well, the closest he'll get to tasting it will be just touch it and then offer that to the Divine Mother, but he would not actually put the meat to his tongue. Well, can you explain this state of my mind? Once I was going from Burdwan to Kamarpukur in a bullock cart when a great storm arose. Some people gathered near the cart. My companions said they were robbers. So I began to repeat the names of God, calling sometimes on Kali, sometimes on Rama, sometimes on Hanuman. What do you think of that? So sometimes there are various stories where you feel, well, which God is going to help me today? And you're not sure, so you start saying the Lord Rama, Krishna, you start saying prayers, all of them, hoping that one of them will come to your rescue. So sometimes that's like a childlike expression of devotion. But the next statement is actually what was M thinking when Ramakrishna was talking this way. And so he's writing down his thought. Was the Master hinting that God is one but is addressed differently by different sects? So one who's a devout Vaishnava would be saying, "Oh Krishna, Om Krishna, please help me, please save me." While a devotee of Hanuman or of Rama would say, "Oh Hanuman, save me." So in this case, M was not interpreting this as someone randomly calling on all the gods and goddesses, but here M is understanding this statement to mean that perhaps God is one, but is addressed differently by different sects. So they would address God according to their belief. So the Master to Balaram, Maya is nothing but lust and gold. A man living in its midst gradually loses his spiritual alertness. He thinks all is well with him. So he sometimes describes as an example of how when you're used to something, you don't notice the decline. As when he went on a carriage ride to a fort, and it was, he felt the whole time that he was on level ground as it was going down, as he was traveling. But then when he got to the destination, he realized that it was a slow decline the whole time. And when he got to the destination, he could look up to where they were. So we think all is well when we are in the world. We think, oh, we're having a good day, and everything's going as we planned, and nothing seems unusual. But unbeknownst to us, we are becoming more and more attracted to the things around us, and we don't notice that right away that there's some spiritual decline. That's why we have to maintain alertness and be ever vigilant, be constantly in prayer, because we're not always aware that a small distraction has now occupied our mind, and now that thought becomes stronger and we take care of it, and then another distraction or maybe another duty, and before you know it, we are no longer thinking about God. And so we have to keep on resetting our mind to either through taking a break, do some prayer, some meditation, and then resume our higher state of mind. So he thinks all is well with him, but he's losing his spiritual alertness. And then he gives an example. The scavenger carries a tub of night soil on his head, and in course of time loses his repulsion to it. Well, night soil, I guess that would mean like waste, human waste, cleaning up a place. We notice that when we are in a room, say we have to clean a kitchen, and we start using some bleach or something. At some point, you're in that environment long enough, you don't smell it anymore. That's why they say, keep all the windows open, get the circulation going. Because when we are in a certain environment, we get used to the surroundings. We get used to the conditions. We no longer discriminate between what is good and bad because we think it's all good. When we use the bathroom, we don't smell ourselves as well as we smell others. So, in the same case here, we have no repulsion to our own bodily smells, but we are repulsed by others because we're used to our own smell. So one gradually acquires love of God through the practice of chanting God's name and glory. 2M. One should not be ashamed of chanting God's holy name. As the saying goes, one does not succeed so long as one has these three: shame, hatred, and fear. So he's saying that under all these conditions, we should just go on chanting God's holy name. Whether we feel shamed, whether we feel hatred, or when we feel fear. Because chanting God's name will dispel the shame, the hatred, and the fear. Why? Because the mind is directed towards something else. The mind can only think of one thing at a time. If you are feeling shame or hatred or fear or any other emotion, by concentrating on chanting God's name, those other thoughts will slowly disperse and be replaced by you chanting the Lord's name, thinking about God's name. At Kamarpukur, they sing kirtan very well. The devotional music is sung to the accompaniment of drums. To Balaram, have you installed any image at Vrindavan? Balaram, yes, sir. We have a grove where Krishna is worshipped. Master, I have been to Vrindavan. The Nidu Grove is very nice indeed. And that is the end of the day. And that is the end of today's class. So, before I conclude with a chant, if you have any questions, otherwise I have an announcement to make. This Friday, Swami Nikhilananda will be continuing with part 3 of Nag Mahashai. So you're all welcome to attend. That will be at 7 p.m., both in the chapel here and broadcast live on YouTube. On January 1st, we celebrate Kalpataru Day. That is a day when Sri Ramakrishna basically became like the Kalpataru, which is like a wish-fulfilling tree, where people felt that he could impart illumination, spiritual experience to those that would come to him. And that is celebrated on January 1st at all our Vedanta societies. And on that day, we are planning to have a day-long vigil from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we would like people to sign up to spend 1 hour in the shrine, commit to 1 hour in the shrine. And there's a sign-up sheet near the front door. There's also a link to a sign-up sheet online that was sent out with our weekly announcement of events this week. So if those present would like to attend, they can sign up on that sheet. The idea is that the shrine is always occupied with someone saying, giving out, saying prayers or chanting the Lord's name. The idea is to build up a spiritual atmosphere in the shrine to basically sustain it for a year, till next Kalpataru. So you are welcome to participate in that. And after that will take place in our shrine upstairs. After that, we will have arati and a talk given by Swami Satchidananda here in the chapel. And that part of it will be broadcast also live streamed on YouTube. So if there are no questions, I will conclude with a chant. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanakamparita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Paramesamityam Tvam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. We salute that Ramakrishna who is without blemish, eternal, and infinite in forms, who has assumed human form out of compassion for the devotees, who is God incarnate, the Supreme Lord, and who is most worshipful. Om, peace, peace, peace to all beings.